offices, starting with our office at
प्रमोद जी, आई थिंक वी आर येट टू मेक इट रिकॉर्डिंग स्टार्ट नहीं की आप. 1 मिनट सर.
Okay, so I'll start the recording maybe.
यस सर
Okay,
प्लीज.
so as I said, Ashwa Legal Advisors LLP is head office at Surat, and then we have branch offices at various cities, including Ahmedabad, Mumbai, Baroda, Pune, Rajkot, Delhi, Faridabad, Nasik, Gurgaon, and many more. And along with that, we also have various network associates who are associated with us across India. And I think our one of the slides will also show where are those network associates currently, and we continue to grow that network. In terms of our services offered, I think Ashwa Legal Advisors LLP is certainly well known for GST, direct and indirect taxes. But apart from that, we also do PMLA, Benami, NCLT matters, including IBC and company law matters. We also do arbitrations, and we have a lot of MNC clients for whom we do arbitration work. All the commercial tax laws, customs, DRI, RERA, these are the few tax laws that we work on. So I think we have various kind of services that we offer, and we represent our client in all tribunals, high courts, and supreme courts. So with that brief introduction, I would welcome once again all of you to this evening where we all will learn a lot together. And I'll hand it over to Vishal and Shefali ji to take it further. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Pramod ji. So, on behalf of Ashwa Legal, I welcome all to this very important webinar. And as you can see, we have already crossed 100. So now we are also live on YouTube for the same. So let me start with the relevance of this particular topic, this particular webinar. This webinar is very crucial now because, as we know, the timelines for issue of notice under 73 for most of the years has expired. And now, as we see, for each and every matter, the department is or has already issued notices under the aegis of Section 74. Now, it becomes very crucial as a tax litigator that we all should be abreast with what should be the position that we should take to defend our clients when it comes to notices being issued under Section 74. So let me just take you to the first basic provision of Section 74. And I request Shefali ji to just brief the first main operating part of Section 74 so that we can take on the issues with this background. Shefali ji, please.
Okay, thanks, Vishal. So Section 74, as we all understand, first of all, it is replaced by another section for the coming years. And in the earlier part, the language of both of the sections are same. The time limit has been increased. There's a little bit change in the time limit, but at this point of time, we will not be focusing on those differences. So first of all, the most important part of Section 74 is like when this particular section can be levied. So 73, when there is a non-fraud case, जिसे हम simple language में we say it कि non-fraud case है, but यहाँ पे 3 important terms हैं which they have used. But Section 74 में मुझे जो एक थोड़ा सा interesting part लगता है that if we see it's starting, it says where it appears to the proper officer that any tax has not been paid, and this particular word, this term has not been paid, it always get my attention because when we see tense wise, so this is the present perfect continuous tense, sorry, past perfect continuous tense, so something which is started in past and it is still continues. मतलब सेक्शन 74 की लेवी में आने के लिए ही एक इम्पॉर्टेंट चीज क्या है कि कोई टैक्स नॉट पेड, शॉर्ट पेड, अर्नेस्टली रिफंडेड, कोई आपको रिफंड जो थी आपने ले ली थी गलती से रॉन्गली आपको मिल गई, इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट आपने रॉन्गली अवेल किया, यूटिलाइज कर लिया, ये जो एक डिफॉल्ट है, दिस लिस्ट ऑफ डिफॉल्ट, this should have started somewhere in the past and this particular default they should be continuing in the present. So that is very important part. मतलब इसका जो एक ग्रामेटिकल मेरे को लगता है फर्स्ट पार्ट पे आके मेरा थोड़ा अटक जाता है क्योंकि उस हिसाब से हम उसको भी ज्यादा ट्रांसलेट नहीं करते हैं. तो यहाँ पे एक यहीं से एक क्वेश्चन मेरे दिमाग में हमेशा अराइज हो जाता है कि अभी सेक्शन 74 में अगर टैक्स ऑलरेडी पे हो चुका है, सो डिफॉल्ट वाज देयर, बट डिफॉल्ट इज नॉट देयर एनी मोर. था पहले डिफॉल्ट, लेकिन अब नहीं है, क्योंकि मैंने ऑलरेडी टैक्स पे करके आई एम मेक इट गुड. तो क्या उसके लिए नोटिस मेरा इशू हो सकता है कि नहीं हो सकता है? इस पे कंट्रोवर्सी भी होती है कि क्या सिर्फ इंटरेस्ट पेनल्टी के लिए 74 का नोटिस इशू हो सकता है कि नहीं हो सकता है. इंटरेस्ट के लिए 74 के नोटिस को इशू करने की रिक्वायरमेंट ही नहीं है, बिकॉज इंटरेस्ट बाय डिफॉल्ट है, तो वहां पे आप 74 का नोटिस नहीं भी इशू करते. इसमें कुछ जजमेंट्स हैं, कुछ कॉन्ट्रोवर्सीज भी हैं बीच में. कोर्ट का तो ये कहना है कि आपको अगर डायरेक्ट ऑर्डर पास कर देते हैं DRC 7, तो वही उसका नोटिस भी है, बिकॉज वहां पे आपको नोटिस देने की जरूरत नहीं है. एज सुन एज यू एक्सेप्ट योर टैक्स लाइबिलिटी, योर इंटरेस्ट इज बाय डिफॉल्ट. तो आपने अगर टैक्स लाइबिलिटी पे की है तो इंटरेस्ट तो आपका बाय डिफॉल्ट है. तो मुझे वहां पे शो कोज की जरूरत नहीं है, क्योंकि मैं आपसे कारण नहीं पूछूंगी. आपने बोला 100 रुपए देने, तो लॉ ने बोला कि तो आपको इंटरेस्ट देने ही है, तो वहां पे मेरे को शो कोज की जरूरत नहीं है. तो इन सम ऑफ द केसेस अगर इश्यू होता है तो कोर्ट से इसकी आपके लिए तो उल्टा अच्छा है कि आपको फिर भी एक मौका दिया जा रहा है कारण बताने का. तो वहां पे तो मेरे क्वेश्चन ही यहाँ पे खत्म हो जाता है कि इंटरेस्ट के लिए आप इशू करो मत करो फर्क नहीं पड़ता. बट हाँ, इंटरेस्ट के पेनल्टी के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से मुझे फर्क पड़ता है, क्योंकि जो पेनल्टी का जन्म होता है, जो 15%, 25%, 50% देन 100% तक जाती है, उस पेनल्टी का जन्म इस नोटिस के साथ होता है. तो अगर पहले से लाइबिलिटी खत्म हो चुकी है तो एक्चुअली में तो कुछ नहीं होगा. बट 74 का अगर नोटिस इशू हो गया तो 15% तो फिक्स है. बट आफ्टर दैट, अब नोटिस इशू करने के बाद मैंने 25% हो गया मेरा इमीडिएटली. मैंने फिर कुछ दिन तक पे नहीं किया, मेरा 50 हो गया. फिर ऑर्डर भी पास हो गया तो मेरा 100% हो गया. तो दैट क्वांटम ऑफ पेनल्टी इंक्रीजेस विद द टाइम लिमिट ऑफ सेक्शन 74 नोटिस. तो यहाँ पे आके नोटिस मेरे को फिर सिर्फ पेनल्टी के लिए इशू हो सकता है, नहीं हो सकता, वो रेलिवेंट होता है. तो ये ऐसे बहुत सारे क्वेश्चंस है जो हम अविनाश भाई से आज पूछने वाले हैं, बिकॉज इन द वेरियस कोर्ट्स हमने काफी सारे केसेस है जो अलग अलग 74 के नोटिस के सिनेरियोज पे किया. आज काफी सारे सिनेरियोज है जो हम लोग कवर करने वाले हैं, मैं और विशाल. हमने उन लोगों पे कुछ उन सारे सिनेरियोज पे कुछ कुछ डिफरेंट क्वेश्चंस बनाए हैं. तो क्वेश्चन विद सम बेसिक्स वी विल आस्क फ्रॉम अविनाश जी, एंड ही विल बी आंसरिंग विद हिज एक्सपीरियंस ऑफ द लाइव कोर्ट, जो भी उनके डिफरेंट डिफरेंट केसेस में जजमेंट के थ्रू उनको लगा कि जो कोर्ट में जाके हो सकता है. तो 74 का जो फर्स्ट पार्टी है वो आपको सिनेरियोज बताता है कि जिनकी वजह से इन्वोक होगा मेरा सेक्शन. आप बोल सकते हो कि सेक्शन के अगले पार्ट्स में 2, 3, 4 में जाके आपको बोला जाता है कि हाँ वो इंटरेस्ट लेवी करेगा, पेनल्टी लेवी करेगा. बट जो उसका लेवी पार्ट है उस पूरे सेक्शन का, वो लेवी पार्ट तो सिर्फ इसी की बात कर रहा है कि आपका स्टिल नॉट पेड है, मतलब आपका डिफॉल्ट स्टिल कंटिन्यूइंग है. तब आप पे सेक्शन इन्वोक होता है. उसके बाद जाके क्या हो रहा है, दैट्स अ डिफरेंट इशू. बट इस पे ऑब्वियसली डिफरेंट डिफरेंट व्यूज हो सकती है काफी लोगों की. इट्स जस्ट माई थॉट, मैं अपना एक पर्सनल व्यू आपको बता रही हूँ. तो वो किसके सिनेरियो में, एक तो फ्रॉड, मिसरिप्रेजेंटेशन एंड सप्रेशन ऑफ फैक्ट्स, तीनों वर्ड्स हैं जो अर्स्टवाइल रिजीम्स में भी यूज हुए हैं. और इस पे जीएसटी में नॉट सो मेनी जजमेंट्स, बट जो हमसे पहले की रिजाइम है उसमें काफी काफी सारे जजमेंट्स भी हैं इसके अलग अलग हिस्सों पे. मिसरिप्रेजेंटेशन ऑफ फैक्ट्स पे है, फ्रॉड का माना जाएगा उस पे भी है. तो अभी जब हम लोग इनसाइट्स लेंगे तो हम ना सिर्फ जीएसटी के केसेस, क्योंकि उनका नंबर अभी बहुत लिमिटेड है, जीएसटी में लिटिगेशन भी इसका भी बहुत ज्यादा नहीं हुआ है, क्योंकि 5 साल की लिमिट ही अभी खत्म हुई है सबसे पहले वाले साल की. 5 अगस्त को उसकी लिमिट खत्म होने के बाद अभी नोटिस आएंगे, ऑर्डर्स आएंगे, लोग कोर्ट में जाएंगे, तो तब जाके उसका लिटिगेशन थोड़ा एक परिपक्व स्थिति में आएगा, मतलब मेच्योरिटी गेन करेगा. अभी तो हम लोग को जो पुराने प्रेसिडेंट्स हैं उन्हीं से ज्यादा रेफरेंसेस इसमें मिल पाएंगे. सो फर्स्ट पार्ट हमारा इसी चीज की बात करता है कि कौन कौन से आपके डिफॉल्ट्स हैं और उनके पीछे आपकी इंटेंशन टू इवेट टैक्स है वो होनी चाहिए. दैट इज अबाउट द फर्स्ट पार्ट. विशाल, आप आगे कंटिन्यू कर सकते हैं अभी.
So as Shefali ji has pointed out the crucial aspect, so I think the first question with which we can start is, if you have already paid the tax, can 74 be issued only for interest penalty? I personally opine that yes. In fact, by paying tax, you have accepted the default, you have accepted the liability. And since you have accepted that, hence, I don't think there could be any way out by which you can evade the interest penalty. Many times, people, when they come to us for advisory, they always raise this question, ki, sir, I have already paid tax to stop the penalty, or to, sorry, not stop, to stop the interest meter. Now, can I contest the interest and tax? My interpretation of law is that we cannot, but I think here, let us take advice of Avinash so that he can come out, if he can come out with some other flavor, maybe something with constitutional backing, as to can you defend only interest penalty if you have already paid the tax? Avinash. Sir, you're on mute.
Yeah, thank you, Vishal bhai. Thank you, Shefali ma'am. The question arises whether you are admitting and paying or not, whether it is coercively recovered or not. At times it happens that during the course of search, the departmental officer says कि sir आपका liability 5 crore से ज़्यादा आ रहा है, and therefore you pay the amount, otherwise we'll arrest you. At that point in time, somebody is saying sound is muted. I'm able.
Yeah,
I'm
you're
audible.
audible.
So at times what happens is we need to look into the facts of the case, and most of the times the error which happens is while explaining the facts of the case, because a rule or an order or a case law cannot be applied unless we are aware about the facts. Most of the times what happens is even a Supreme Court judgment or a High Court jurisdictional judgment may also not lay down a law. So when a law is not being laid down, the facts becomes important. And when law is laid down, then it's okay. Then if any question is of the similar nature, any question of law is of the similar nature, then that will apply. So my reply would be, we need to first locate, identify on what basis the tax has been discharged, whether it is admission and then discharge. If it is an admission, then it goes without saying that interest is compensatory, and for whatever loss that has been caused to the government treasury because of your delay in making the payments, the interest will have to be borne by you. Second, so far as penalty is concerned, I quite vividly remember that there was one section, section 80 of the Finance Act 1994, which was giving leeway or liberty for waiver of interest. For waiver of penalty. Now that waiver of penalty clause has been taken away, even rather it was taken away in the Finance Act itself when the new law came in 2012, and thereafter the amendment was there. And in section 73 of the Finance Act 1994, they brought in this, and then section 76 and section 78 was there, which was providing all these penalties which were mandatory penalties. So I am of the view, even if you do not have the intention, I'm again repeating, even if you do not have the intention to defraud the revenue, but you are willingly or unwillingly getting covered into fraud, willful misstatement, or suppression by any mode, then in that case you cannot avoid penalty. Penalty is mandatory. Section 74 deals with the imposition of mandatory penalty, and therefore we cannot shy away from the penalty. But yes, had it been a case of coercive recovery, had it been a case of payment under protest, we can certainly avoid the interest and penalty to some extent till the litigation or till the issue is resolved. And once the issue is resolved in our favor, then certainly we can take the benefit of it and the interest and penalty can be avoided. Otherwise, my understanding is that interest is compensatory and is mandatory. It cannot be waived. And penalty is again mandatory under section 74 if you are unable to make out a case that this is not a fit case for section 74. If that be so, if it is not a fit case, then certainly you have to pay the liability because the penalty, because it is a mandatory penalty as per me.
Great. So we can conclude that interest and penalty follows the admission of tax liability, and only when in adjudication or maybe in writ where we can prove that we are not fitting in section 74, then only we can avoid interest.
One more aspect just clicked to my mind, so I'm sharing for the benefit of all of us. That is, again, we argued one matter in Gujarat High Court, wherein directly a show cause notice was issued for the penalty, imposition of penalty under section 122. Now, when we read section 122, we do not find any provision which says that you can issue notice under section 122. Mm-hmm. And now, taking the reference from the erstwhile regime, they were supposed to issue section 73 notice for imposition of penalty under section 76, 77, or 78. So taking that as a backup, we argued this matter before the Gujarat High Court, I think in 2020, wherein the Gujarat High Court had dismissed the matter. I think if I'm not wrong, the case was Mahavir Enterprises versus Union of India, something like that. The reason was that the government has a rule making power under section 164. Rule making power is very broad, and therefore if we read that rule 142 not only includes 73, 74, it also includes 122, and therefore an independent notice in DRC 01 can be issued under section 122 along with the notice under section 122. So therefore that brought in the interpretation that even if there is no provision under section 122 specific provision, but still a separate notice can be issued only for the purpose of levy of penalty. और इसी को अगर आप लिंक करें, so we can read section 7513, which says if a penalty is imposed under section 74, then there cannot be a penalty under any other provision of the law. So 15% penalty अगर आपने भर दिया and if the case is concluded, except 132, all the proceedings will conclude. So now section 122, 122.17, 122.12, 122.111, ये मैं इसलिए बोल रहा हूँ because just now I have seen one order, जिसमें एक 10 करोड़ का order, it is 10 crore 41 lakhs order, and it has been made at 80 crores order. He has imposed penalty in all the sections whatever was possible. 122.1, 122.12, 122.17, 122.111, then 122.2b. In all these sections, he has imposed the policy penalty. So this also is important, that if we are falling under section 174, if we are admitting the liability, then we should make sure that we discharge the liability under section 74. And the moment we discharge the liability under section 174, will be relieved from all the other penalties which are leviable under the act. Just this much I wanted to share.
So one more insight that we draw is that many times in show cause, alongside 74, they also include or they add a penalty of 122.
122.
So this is where I think we should make it a point to contest, stating
100%.
that you cannot levy two penalties under the same. So 122 penalty is altogether a separate proceeding. So either you should have issued notice with 122 penalty, or if you are issuing notice with 74 penalty, then it has to be only 74 penalty.
No, because section 7513 is quite clear into this. 7513, if we read, where any penalty is imposed under section 73 or section 74 or section 74 capital A, no penalty for the same act or omission shall be imposed on the same person under any other provision of this act. तो आपके 50% से ज्यादा शोकाज नोटिस तो penalties वाले वैसे ही ड्रॉप हो जाएंगे, because that is not leviable at all. And then I'll also like to draw one more section, attention to one more section of section which I was just reading. Yeah, section 74 explanation. If we have there that explanation in the screen, if you can show that explanation 2, it is again very relevant, because आजकल जो शोकॉज आता है उसमें ऐसा लिखते हैं ABC Limited, then A director, B director, C director, D director, all the directors are there and they impose equivalent penalty to all.
Right.
Now let us read what explanation 2 says. It says where the notice under the same proceedings is issued to the main person liable to pay tax, that is ABCD Limited, and some other persons, and such proceedings against the main person have been concluded, meaning thereby he accept under section 74, pay along with interest and 15% or 25% or 50% penalty. The proceedings against all persons liable to pay penalty under 122 and 125 are deemed to be concluded. तो बाकी जितने भी आपने कोर नोटिसेस बनाए हैं उनकी प्रोसीडिंग्स भी मेरी अंडरस्टैंडिंग ये है कि दैट विल कंक्लूड, दैट कैन नॉट कंटिन्यू.
Right.
So most of us do not pay attention to this also. So this is again very important explanation, I would say. If Vishal want to add anything or anyone, then most welcome.
Yeah, so I appreciate this particular insight. In this, I believe we should note one thing, that when there are co-notices in the same notice, then what I understand, what Avinash ji is trying to pitch is that once it is established against the main person that you are liable to pay penalty under section 73 or 74, and the person proceeds to do the same, in that particular case, all other co-notices would not be liable to penalty under 122 or 125. But I think what Bhaiya also wants to indirectly say that they still continue to be leviable to 73, 74 penalties if they are applicable, but not 122 and 125, correct?
Correct.
So I think it is corollary to the first main section, like what we just discussed. We were discussing that.
Let me give one example. ABC Limited is the main person against whom the allegation is there. Then it is A, B, C. All three are directors or shareholders or whatsoever. Now, show cause notices of 100 crores. He accepts, ABC Limited accepts, pays that 100 crores along with interest, along with 25% penalty. Now, the provision of section 74 says the moment it will be done, the entire proceeding will collapse. सारी proceeding it will conclude. So this explanation, if I understand it correctly, means that if the main person accepts pays under section 74 and the proceedings are concluded under this section, then no proceedings of 120 to 125 can continue. 73 74 में तो नोटिस उसको ABC को मिलेगा ही नहीं मेरे हिसाब से, 122 में ही मिलेगा. So even all those proceedings will get concluded. That is what I read. Maybe I'm wrong.
अविनाश जी बिल्कुल सही कह रहे हैं विशाल जी. इसमें होगा क्या कि जो 73 74 है, 74 का नोटिस है, दैट इज फॉर टैक्स नॉट पेड शॉर्ट पेड. वो जो कंडीशन है टैक्स पे करने की लायबिलिटी मेन कंपनी की थी, और उसका नोटिस भी सिर्फ कंपनी को ही आ सकता है. डायरेक्टर्स को इसलिए आएगा कि उन्होंने कोई बेनिफिट रिटेन किया है, तो उसके लिए आता है कि अगर आपने उसको कोई बेनिफिट रिटेन किया, या फिर एक क्लॉज होता है कि आपने मतलब आप हेल्प कर रहे थे या सपोर्ट कर रहे थे कोई इस तरह का वो करने में. तो जो 74 का केस बनता है वो सिर्फ कंपनी पे ही बनता है, क्योंकि टैक्स तो उन्हीं के लिए पेबल था. डायरेक्टर की तो पर्सनली कोई सप्लाई थी नहीं. तो वो एज ए सेकंड और थर्ड पर्सन उस केस के अंदर इन्वॉल्व थे. तो फर्स्ट मतलब जिसको टैक्स पे करना था उसकी लायबिलिटी खत्म हुई, उसने अपना कंक्लूड कर दिया, आपका ऑटोमेटिकली कंक्लूड हो गया फिर.
परफेक्ट.
ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट प्रोविजन है मेरे हिसाब से,
बिल्कुल
बिकॉज
बिल्कुल.
बहुत सारे लोगों को शायद ये ध्यान नहीं है, या शायद वो इसके ऊपर अटेंशन नहीं देते, और
जी
वो
जी
को नोटिस का. बिकॉज आज ही मैंने एक रिप्लाई, अभी हम लोग एक वर्कआउट कर रहे हैं, एक कोई बड़ा इशू है जिसमें मैं और विशाल उसको वो असाइनमेंट टेकअप कर रहे हैं. एंड उसमें ऐसा ही है कि को नोटिसी को, दुनिया भर के को नोटिसी को भी नोटिस दे रखा है. तो को नोटिसी का नोटिस तभी सस्टेन होगा जब वो 74 में नहीं जाके वो लिटिगेट कर रहा हो. अगर वो 74 में जाके कंक्लूड करेगा, देन दिस इज अ रिलीफ which is given in the act itself, that rest of the co-notice will be relieved from the entire burden of the penalty. This is what I understand. Maybe I'm not correct in my interpretation. Courts बोलेंगी थोड़े टाइम में, लेकिन this is what I'm interpreting.
Yeah, but that is what we are here for, so that we can bring our insights, and see from these insights only the honorable courts will tomorrow give their final verdict. So we are the one who has to give them this particular thought process. And anyways, honorable courts are there only to interpret the law. So we are, as litigators, we as counsels are the one who have to give them that this is one of the possible intentions and interpretations. So I think this can be a very important takeaway of this particular point. I request all participants to take a note, because nowadays this is very common that one single show cause is issued with multiple people made co-notices. So the penalty aspect is very important, which I think everybody should take note of. So let us now, so this is where we conclude our first question, which involved two aspects. So now let me take you to the other questions specifically that we have drafted, and wherever required, we'll come back to the slides. Now, very common point that nowadays we see that without initiating the first step, that is of ASMT 10, now they are directly issuing notices under 74, because somehow they are also late in taking their actions, and now suddenly they have realized that the time limit is passing by, and they need to raise the notice or issue the notice, and also then eventually conclude the proceedings. So now the first question comes.
एक और food for thought है. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Please. We are here for open discussion.
Interject, but one another food for thought. अभी ये लोग क्या करते हैं? They issue a notice to Avinash saying that आपने गलत इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट लिया, आपने बोगस इनवॉइसिंग किया, ये और वो, and they impose tax interest and penalty on me. फिर मेरे जो फॉरवर्ड यानी जिनको मैंने आउटवर्ड किया उनको भी, और जो मेरे इनवर्ड जिनसे मैंने इनवर्ड लिया उनको भी, वो 122 का नोटिस देते हैं. So whether this will apply in that case or not, that is again a question. See, this explanation never says it has to be a single notice. यानी अगर अविनाश को एक नोटिस दिया 74 में, और अविनाश ने विशाल को अगर दिया, और विशाल को 122 का नोटिस दिया बोगस का पेनल्टी का, शेफाली मैम को उनको सप्लाई करने का पेनल्टी दिया 122 का, और अविनाश ने अगर 74 में एक्सेप्ट करके पे कर दिया, तो विशाल की नोटिस और शेफाली की नोटिस बोथ शुड बी क्वाश्ड or dropped. This is what I interpret.
So Bhaiya, it means we have got one more case for writ, because now many people in fake invoicing all are getting this notice.
This is just an insight.
No, so this I think can be a very good point. Definitely, we have so many notices. We can take up one of them under writ, and I'm sure everybody present over here would also be facing this. So if one of the person is discharging, because I think here what indirectly Avinash Bhaiya is saying, because for getting into writ, you have to challenge either the law or the notification or the circular. So indirectly what he is hinting is we can or we should challenge the circular, maybe in writ, which has said that all are required to pay penalty 200%, 100%, right? The fake invoicing circular. So I think that this is a very interesting insight, a very fit case for challenging the fake invoicing circular in writ. Fine. So let us move ahead. So we have drawn 3 different angles from one single section and explanation. That's great. See, this is where a litigator's or legal counsel's experience comes in, how to read a law, and on the basis of their experience of handling writ and different high court, Supreme Court cases, we get to know how things unfold over there. So that's really a great value added point for all the participants. I request everyone to make a note of this. Now we take up the individual issues which have come up in past 2 or 3 years, specifically since the time they have started issuing show cause notice under 74. The first question is, can notice directly be issued without first resorting to ASMT 10 action? So nowadays there are many proceedings where first you get ASMT 10, you make a reply, the reply is not satisfactory, and then they move ahead with 74. That is fine. But many times we are seeing that they are directly issuing 74. So a question comes, is this a mandatory procedure that you should start with ASMT 10 and then go ahead if not satisfied with 74? I'll first share my view, then I'll request Shefali ji, and then maybe Avinash Bhaiya can point out. I believe there is no such precondition under the law that you have to strictly go by the route of ASMT 10 only. So if the respected officer thinks it is a fit case for 74, all the limbs of 74 are satisfied, I understand, I interpret the law like this, that they can directly resort to 74 action. Shefali ji, your views, and then Avinash Bhaiya.
Because Section 74 says that if he has belief, so belief may be from ASMT 10, but ASMT 10 is generally for the differences between the various returns, and generally those cases, like, they may fall, but in some rare circumstances, but generally they won't fall in 74. 74 information may be some from other sources also, maybe
Right.
a raid, search, seizure, maybe busting a fake invoicing racket, etc. So there may be different sources of those informations.
Super.
I mean,
Bhaiya, your inputs on this?
See, there are a lot of arguments which is going on. If you are only relying on the returns that is being filed, and out of those returns only you are calculating a liability, or it appears to you that there is some short payment or non-payment or erroneous refund or something like that. So you can directly, the question is whether you can directly resort to Section 74 or you will have to go to 61. There can be 2 arguments for this. One would be that the provision, when we are relying on the return, and there is a specific provision, Section 61, which says if you are scrutinizing the return, you will have to give an opportunity first by way of ASMT 10. Then if I am unable to explain, then you can go for the separate proceedings, which may be by issuance of summon and then Section 74 or 73 notice. At the same time, the second school of thought would be, the question which would be relevant here is whether these provisions are interwoven or not. Because Section 61 is falling into the chapter of assessment. And Section 73, 74 falls into the chapter of demand and recovery. So therefore, I am of the view that if he is relying only on the returns and he is writing also in Section 74 notice, then first and foremost, it cannot be a Section 74 notice.
Exactly.
Second, because he has missed the bus and the time limit has been over, he is issuing a notice under Section 74, it will not sustain. But over and above the scrutinization of returns or getting some figures from the returns, he has tried to get confirmations maybe from some statements, or maybe he has issued a summon, thereafter got some further information. If that is the basis, then certainly it can be a show cause notice which can be directly issued without issuance of ASMT 10. So therefore, again, important would be what is the basis of issuance of Section 74? And trust me, friends, most of the notices which I have seen under Section 74 does not contain the reason why it is Section 74 which is being invoked. It simply says there was fraud, there was suppression. It is a fit case for 74, and therefore 74 is issued. But why it is fit case? there are jurisprudence in the erstwhile law that we need to establish mere interpretation problem cannot be a reason for extended period invocation, cannot be a reason for suppression. Merely some information that you get and we without confirming that information, like इन्होंने service tax में issue किया था notices 26 AS and ST3 के differences था, that would not sustain. So there are a lot of such issues which may creep up. But yes, to be very honest, there are some petitioners who approached the high courts saying that section 61 was not followed and directly section 73 or 74 notice is issued. Courts have not agreed to that to large extent, but yes, there are judgments in favor also. Madras High Court single bench is a judgment which says that yes, पहले ASMT 10 करना चाहिए था, then you should have resorted to section 73 or 74. But I do not concur to that issue. My reply would be section 74, certainly it is an independent provision. And the law is very clear. It clearly says if it appears to the officer on the basis of his independent examination, that may be based on the scrutiny of returns or that may be based on any other further information, he can certainly issue a notice under section 74. Because 74 again, see what is the difference in ASMT 10 and 74? There is no difference as such. ASMT 10 में भी आपको अपॉर्चुनिटी दी जाती है, ASMT 11 में आपको रिप्लाई करना होता है, शोकॉज में भी आपको अपॉर्चुनिटी दी जा रही है. एंड शोकॉज के पहले जो सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चन आएगा कि जो शायद हमने मिस किया है इस लिस्ट में, द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चन वुड बी दैट कैन अ शोकॉज नोटिस बी डायरेक्टली इशूड अंडर सेक्शन 74 without issuance of ASMT 10 or any other notice? The answer is no, because they will have to issue DRC 01 capital A. वो अगर वो नहीं इशू करते हैं और 74 डायरेक्ट कर देते हैं, then the answer would be it is not permissible. So scrutiny of returns किया, उनको लगा कि there is suppression, they cannot directly go to the 74. They will have to resort to section 74, section 74(5), read with rule 142, sub rule 1 capital A, and they will have to issue DRC 01 capital A.
Yeah, I that is why I just changed the slide to normal, because I think we also tried to address the other issue. Fine. So let us then go ahead. So first question we have answered that in general ASMT 10 is not compulsory, but yes, there are varied decisions. Now this is again a very important crucial issue, that if some issues are identified during audit and after that, after the conclusion of audit, now they are planning to issue you show cause, whether they can issue show cause under 74, or since that particular matter has arisen out of your audit proceedings, can it be or should it be only under 73? Here my understanding, which I would like to share, is that where a particular entry is found recorded in the books of accounts and it was also reported in the returns, yeah, maybe it may have happened that the reporting may be in a different column or a different table, but it was reported. And then later on, at the time of audit, the officer identifies that no, he thinks that this is not correct. You should have paid extra RCM, which you have not done. Or there is some liability which, according to the officer, is different than what you have reported. And then the officer, on the basis of audit investigations or on the basis of audit, identifies these issues. I believe 74 is not maintainable. Yes, if in audit he finds some clandestine sales which have not been part of your books, and on those clandestine sales, if the officer wishes to take action, then 74 is maintainable. Yes, Shefali ji. You are on mute. You are on mute.
So my views are also similar कि इसमें हमारा कोई फिक्स रूल नहीं हो सकता है. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल ऑडिट के टाइम पे जो आपके फैक्ट्स हैं, जो आपको मिली इंफॉर्मेशन, द नेचर ऑफ दैट पर्टिकुलर इंफॉर्मेशन इज वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. सिर्फ इसलिए कि कुछ मुझसे छूट गया था या मैंने कुछ किसी रिटर्न में कुछ मिस कर दिया, या मे बी कहीं पे मुझसे टैक्स पेमेंट होना भी रह गया on a particular, say it's a genuine transaction, and during the course of audit you came to know that I haven't paid tax on that particular transaction. So आप ये नहीं कह सकते कि अच्छा हमने ही पता लगा दिया तो आप टैक्स पे करते ही नहीं, तो ये फ्रॉड हो गया. तो बिकॉज फ्रॉड या 74 के लिए, फ्रॉड के लिए मिसरिप्रेजेंटेशन ऑफ फैक्ट है, सप्रेशन है, तो वहां पे मेरे पास एक डिफरेंट ग्राउंड होना चाहिए वेयर आई विल हैव टू प्रूव that there is a fraud. Fraud means your active participation, you actively did something to hide the entire information, right? तो ऐसे information तो हो सकती है audit के time पे भी नहीं आए, but in some cases there is possibility कि अगर हम deeply audit करते हैं तो हमें कुछ चीजें मिलती हैं, तो वो एक जो उसका essence है, मतलब 74 का जो एक है कि आपको कुछ ऐसा ग्राउंड होगा आपका कि जहाँ पे पता चल कि आपने एक्टिवली उसको छुपाने के लिए, उसका टैक्स पे नहीं करने के लिए, यू हैव डन सम एक्टिव एफर्ट्स टू हाइड इट. सो सिर्फ नहीं दिखाना या नहीं रिटर्न में बता पाना इज अ डिफरेंट थिंग, एंड एक्टिवली हाइडिंग समथिंग विद द इंटेंशन टू इवेट टैक्स, दैट्स अ डिफरेंट थिंग. तो ऑडिट में कभी कुछ ऐसा इशू निकल के आ सकता है जो 74 में भी कवर हो सकता है विद द प्रॉपर रीजनेबल ग्राउंड्स अगर आप उसमें पुटअप करते हैं. बट जनरली जिन चीजों के लिए डिपार्टमेंट वाले करते हैं वो नहीं होगा. तो उनका है कि 73 टाइम बार हो गया तो कि वी विल गो विद 74. वो तो ऑफकोर्स कोई भी रीजन नहीं है, बट उनका तो सबसे ज्यादा जो रीजन होता है 74 में जाने का वही होता है कि उधर टाइम लिमिट खत्म हुई तो आई विल गो विद 74, राइट. तो यहाँ पे बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है कि क्या आपसे सच में कुछ गलती हो गई है या आपने कुछ फ्रॉड करने की कोशिश की, तो ग्राउंड वहां पे आपको उसके जो बहुत स्ट्रॉन्ग क्रिएट करने पड़ेंगे, तो आप कर सकते हैं. अविनाश जी.
देखिए, लॉ बोलता है 65 सबसेक्शन 7 इज वेरी क्लियर. इट सेज सेक्शन 73 और 74 एनी नोटिस कैन बी इशूड. But let us first try to understand what is the scope under audit. Is there any scope or is there any power given to the authorities to locate the secret documents or documents which are secreted somewhere, or the information which is secreted somewhere during the course of audit? Maybe the answer is no. If the answer is no, it means that section 75 does not empower them to do the investigative functions.
Right.
They have the power only to do auditory functions, and audit functions are restricted to the books of accounts and the pertaining relevant documents pertaining to the books of accounts. If something is recorded properly in the books of account, then majority what will happen? There can be an interpretational problem. There can be an excess valuation issue, overvaluation issue, undervaluation issue. That can be at the most which can be argued by the departmental officers taking the cognizance of the books. So yes, certainly, if there is an issue of overvaluation or undervaluation which is established by the departmental authorities, then they can issue a notice under section 74. So this is an exceptional circumstance under which an audit can get culminated into a 74 notice.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, in most of the cases, it is bound to be under section 73. It cannot be under section 74. Reason being, there is no investigative power which is given to them. If they want to invoke the investigation power, then they will have to elevate this section 75 action into section 67 action.
Right.
And that too specifically section 67(2). जब तक वो नहीं करेंगे तब तक वो ऑडिट में मेरा ऐसा मानना है कि they have a restricted role to play. They can only play that role, and within that role, there are less likelihood that something which is not recorded is being taken out unless they do investigative function. So वहां पे मेरा मानना है कि 74 easily नहीं हो सकता unless they drag something from the books only and say, see, look, this is undervaluation. Look, this is overvaluation. Then in that case, they can issue 74, otherwise not.
Great. Let us go to the next issue. Again, firstly, I don't understand whether this is a litigation point or not, but at least for first 4-5 years, all have understood that this is the main litigation under GST, because all the AS7010s, all the show causes have been revolving around mismatch cases. Few examples are 2A, 3B mismatch, e-way bill summary versus GSTR1 summary mismatch, and so on. Now the question is that can 74 show cause be issued where the department identifies mismatch in one of these returns or one of these statements? Here, I believe more than 90% cases, 74 is not maintainable, because all this is derived from the returns itself. When they are saying that this is a mismatch between 2A, 3B, how it can be in any ways be called as a 74 case? Neither it is fraud, neither it is suppression, but somehow we have been seeing that now post the conclusion of time limit for 73 show cause, wherever they have missed the bus, they are now resorting to 74 notices even for mismatch cases. I personally believe that these are in general not maintainable under 74. Chef Ali ji.
Same here, Vishalji. Generally, any difference between different kind of returns. That too, those statements like 2A and 2B, they were not even clear to the department. So any different arising from those kind of statements, like even they were not clear about it, then how they can put those particular cases in 74? So that's pretty less likely. But they can do, मतलब department तो कुछ भी कर सकता है. But legally, as per the law scheme, नहीं होना चाहिए.
Great. Bhaiya, your inputs?
See, prima facie, I'll also agree that 74 cannot be done. But let us take an example. In GSTR 3B, I have taken a credit of 100 crores. छोटी फिगर आजकल चलती नहीं है, इसलिए मैं छोटी फिगर नहीं बोल रहा हूँ, सब 100 crores के ऊपर बोल रहा हूँ. So let us say there is a this thing input tax credit which is claimed as 100 crores, and in GSTR 2A it is 0. And in GSTR 2A, the credit which is being reflected is 0. Because what happened is, I have not purchased from anywhere. I have just generated a credit. Then certainly 74 can be issued. So yes, I am of the view that they will have to make out a case. Generally, they will not be in a position to issue in these simple mismatches. Because there may arise a situation 2A में अभी नहीं दिख रहा है, next month में दिखेगा, 2 महीने पहले दिखेगा, 2 महीने बाद दिखेगा, वो सब हो सकता है. तो I'm not going into all those genuine cases, but there are cases, because if we are into this forum and we are discussing and we are saying 74 नहीं issue हो सकता, they will also have to give the exceptions. So exception is that if there is an intentional this thing wherein there is a liability which is very clear and very apparent that he has claimed a bogus credit, there is no supplier at all, then in that case 74 notice is certainly permissible and it is maintainable.
Just a follow-up question to this. Nowadays, a common trend of notice is that my supplier was found to be bogus, or his registration was cancelled, and that is why action is being initiated against me. They want to disallow my ITC, and for that they are issuing 74 notice. Firstly, obviously, the second part is how to argue, that is a different thing. But first, the main discussion point is, for my supplier's fault, where he may have entered into transaction with somebody else and they may have caught, and now it is a general practice that they go down the line, up the line for that particular person and issue everybody a notice. Can I be issued a notice? In short, whether the notice issued to me under 74 would be maintainable, or they should have given me a simple inquiry letter asking for details first. And if not satisfied, then only they should have issued 74.
My simple answer would be, they will have to prove the connivance. If they are able to prove that, again I'll restart with the same thing which I started with, that first and foremost they need to make out a case. They need to make out a case that this is a fit case for section 74, and the case can be made out only when they are able to establish that there was some connivance between my supplier and myself. The supplier does not exist, and therefore due to the connivance I was hand in gloves with my supplier, and therefore section 74 will be attractive. Otherwise, in normal circumstances, the answer would be no. I'll agree with you that 74 cannot be given because of the fault of my supplier. But if the connivance is there, if there is some trail of the movement of cash, if there is no movement of goods, only invoicing are there, then certainly I am a part of it. यही assume किया उस circular ने, तभी उन्होंने बोला कि आपको penalty तो लगेगी. That was the reason, because they have presumed that you were having the hand holding, or you were having the hand in gloves with him. So in that case, 74 is invocable.
But anyways, I think we discussed a few minutes back that even that circular is challengeable as per the wordings of the section and
Absolutely.
the explanation itself.
Absolutely.
Once the main person is paying the penalty under 74, then no action can be taken against me, even under 122.
Correct.
Fine.
And even it is a settled law that circulars are not binding on the taxpayer. It is
Exactly.
binding only on the authorities. So we may not follow that.
Exactly. So basically, where simply because one person is identified as bogus, my transaction may be genuine, but as a protocol nowadays, they issue notices to everyone. Firstly, the data is shared with the respective areas commissionerate, and from there, the respective officer directly issues notice under 74. So as Avinash Bhaiya is trying to put forth, if your transaction is genuine, then you should definitely first challenge the notice under 74 itself. So the first point is whether we can challenge notice under 74. The answer is yes, subject to your client's transaction is genuine. Now, this is a very interesting point. As we all know, 74 is applicable whenever the short payment, non-payment, etc. is arising out of fraud, misrepresentation, etc., leading to evasion of tax. Now, interestingly, there are so many cases where there is a short payment. Either I may have classified it wrongly, or I have taken a different valuation than what the department feels is correct. In short, as per the department, there is a short payment. Now, what is generally presumed in these show cause notices ki once there is a short payment is equal to evasion, and evasion, so it show cause under 74 is issued. Now, the main question is, what I would like to bring out over here is that whenever there is a short payment for multiple reasons, can every short payment be equated to evasion of tax, and can it lead to 74? In other words, what could be our grounds of defenses wherever there is a short payment for any reason? There could be multiple reasons, hundreds of reasons why there is short payment. So can every short payment be equated to evasion of tax? Yes, Avinash bhai.
No, no, absolutely not. Every short payment cannot be equated with evasion of tax, because there has to be some what I can say, some indicator which indicates that there was a action towards evasion of tax, and I would say deliberate action towards the evasion of tax. Even an action with no intention to evade payment of tax because of the interpretational issues or some other issues may not be falling into this. And plus, the section itself says that if it is a fraud, they need to establish fraud, or it is willful misstatement. They will have to bring on record how they are alleging that some statement which was not stated correctly was willfully done. Or suppression. The suppression itself is defined in the law, which is very broad. So my answer would be, they need to establish very clearly that there was either of these three. Either there was an intention to, there was a suppression, therefore willful misstatement, or there was fraud. Either of these three. And over and above this, they also need to establish that these three actions were to evade tax. Suppression is defined so broadly that if I'm required to file a return and disclose something, and if I have not disclosed it correctly, then it is leading to suppression. So his case will fall into suppression. But then at the same time, he'll also have to prove that this non-declaration, the return, is an intention to evade tax. Unless he is able to do that, he'll not be able to sustain 74 notice. This is what I can say.
So I'll give few examples so that I think it will be more understandable to people attending this webinar. First example, most common one, payment to government, where the department feels that there is a liability under RCM which you have not discharged. Now here the interesting case is there is no possibility in any of my returns where I can show all these payments on which I have not paid RCM. So interestingly, wherever there is RCM, there will always be non-disclosure, because if I believe there is a bona fide belief that this payment I am making to government, and this is either a payment which is not in the nature of service, or it is fitting in one of the exemption entries, and hence I am not liable to pay tax, and that is why I have not paid the tax. Obviously, there is nowhere in any of the returns 1 or 3B where I can report this. Like for example, if it is the other case is now towards my outward supply, where I believe that bona fide, I have a belief that my outward supply is exempt and hence I have not paid tax. So there we can say that at least there is a table in GSTR1 where I'm supposed to report my exempt supply and I have not done that. So there they may entice this particular point of suppression. But where it is on the RCM side, there is no table anywhere where I have to report those payments on which I have not paid RCM. So how can we understand in this case of RCM, for example, that by not reporting anywhere, whether it still fits in section 74? Because anyways, I have not paid tax because I am under a bona fide belief that it is not a taxable payment under RCM. How there we will apply suppression? That is my main question.
So the only answer would be, if we are able to establish that the ball comes to us, and we'll have to reply that it was a bona fide action.
Exactly, and mainly I think we should add in our replies at what we are doing in all our replies, that there is no table anywhere to report RCM payments. So even if I have not reported, it does not tantamounts to suppression of facts. And since it is not a suppression of facts, 74 is not maintainable.
I'll suggest one more action.
Yes.
Postmortem से पहले suppose करके एक action ले सकते हैं. If we are having a doubt whether RCM will be applicable or not, write a letter to your jurisdictional commissioner, write a letter to your SC, mark a copy to the superintendent saying that I am doing such kind of transactions, I am having no clarity as to whether RCM will be payable or not. See, they are not going to take any action again in the for your letter.
Correct.
In 99.9% of the circumstances or cases. But there is a settled law which says that if they have the knowledge of something and then they find that there was a suppression, they cannot levy penalty because they were already aware about the issue. So आप ये भी बोल सकते हैं कि सर मैंने तो आपसे पहले ही पूछा था, आपने मेरे को रिप्लाई नहीं किया उसके ऊपर. So now this was already in your knowledge. So coming after 3 years or 5 years, now you cannot say कि आपने वो पेमेंट नहीं किया था 4 साल पहले, इसलिए अभी आप उसको पेनल्टी भरो 74 में. No, that is not permissible because there is not suppression. It was already disclosed to the authorities by way of a letter. You have already inquired that. So that also can be one of the ways wherein we can safeguard with the penalties.
And most importantly, there is nothing on the portal where we can upload such letters. So I think it has to be only physical.
Correct.
So just we need to have a physical acknowledgement that such a letter we have submitted. Great. So
best mode would be mail. Best mode would be mail भेज दीजिए.
Even better, because I'm sure they would not be looking at each and every mail that is coming. Now, again, a follow-up question to this, that many times because of interpretation issues, I have not paid tax. Again, the interpretation either may be in terms of the classification, HSN, or either whether it is a composite supply or missupply, though no such cases may have come to all the people, but anyways, we have started getting these cases. So I'm taking up this point that they are challenging that you have classified it as composite supply, but it should be mixed. And because it should be mixed, it should be on the highest rate. Or I have done splitting up of a transaction where I believe these are 3 independent supply, but they are saying, no, this is one single supply. So it may be an interpretation issue with terms of classification, with terms of valuation, or even with terms of exemption applicability. Now, whenever there is any such thing, the department always puts in 74 only. Like the best example, in fact, the case which we are also handling, which is a very big multi-crore case, that is of corporate guarantee. Now, very recently in 2023, only the government has come up with circular clarifying or presuming, firstly, I'll say that there is a levy. And with that presumption, they are clarifying the valuation. Now, the question is that now in 2023, they have come up with a clarification as to the valuation where they are presuming there is a levy, but we have not paid the tax, especially again in terms of Schedule 1 transactions. Like for one example is corporate guarantee. There are multiple such cases because Schedule 1 concept of deemed supply is something very new to GST law. In fact, in many cases, even departments are yet to explore and understand all the things that fall in Schedule 1. So in such cases where it was a bona fide interpretation issue or a bona fide understanding or interpretation of the law, which led us not to pay tax and even not to report, can it still fall or fit in the broad category of fraud, misrepresentation, suppression of fact, enticing 74? Shefali ji, any inputs you would like to give on this?
Yes, maybe not in GST. यहाँ पे हमारे पास बहुत सारे precedents नहीं है, but in the erstwhile laws we have many judgments where if there is a difference of opinion, if there is a, there can be 2 different interpretation of a particular provision, and like you are having the different interpretation, classification issues, किसी चीज पे टैक्स लगना था या नहीं लगना था, मतलब उस पे लेवी itself आती है कि नहीं आती है जीएसटी में, whether it's a particular thing is supply or not. If there is that kind of issue, yeah, if there is a particular issue which was already under litigation, so if say there is a particular issue, कुछ जजमेंट्स उसके अगेंस्ट है, कुछ उसके सपोर्ट में, बट इट वाज ऑलरेडी अंडर लिटिगेशन, तो यानी कि वहां पे 2 ओपिनियंस ऑलरेडी पॉसिबल थे, तो in any such case we cannot say कि it was a fraud or misrepresentation या suppression of fact है, क्योंकि in that case जो टैक्स पेयर है उसके पास एक proper ground है कि उसने अपना एक ओपिनियन वहाँ पे क्रिएट किया. Just because you are of different opinion and in the case of department and SSC तो हमेशा ये होगा कि if there are two interpretation तो आपका interpretation हमेशा अपने benefit का होगा, मैं हमेशा अपने benefit वाले interpretation लूंगी. तो वहाँ पे you cannot say कि it is a fraud case. वहाँ पे आपको एक relief मिलता है क्योंकि वहाँ पे ऑलरेडी आपके पास ग्राउंड था उस पर बिलीव करने के लिए.
But then this is what is, as you yourself mentioned, actually, I was going to put this question back to you, that I will always have an interpretation which is beneficial to me. In fact, rather many times the department alleges that now since I have identified, now you are saying that you had this understanding, but originally it was your intention to evade tax. Now you are taking ground or shelter of some exemption entry or of some other legality or constitutional validity. So how can we address this, or what can be our counters either in the show cause or maybe if we are going for it? Yes,
See,
Avinash. Okay, ma'am. You want to add?
अविनाश जी बोलेंगे तो ज्यादा अच्छा रहेगा.
नहीं आप
Yes.
बोलिए मैम प्लीज.
See, देखो जहाँ पे मैंने आपको बोला कि इंटरप्रिटेशनल इशू किस किस केस में हो सकता है. जैसे अभी पापड़ के टैक्स रेट पे था, सो इसका मतलब कि यानी कि इंडस्ट्री में काफी लोग दूसरा रेट ऑलरेडी फॉलो कर रहे थे, फिर डिपार्टमेंट ने बोला, फिर वो लिटिगेशन में गया. या फिर इवन वीकेंड से जैसे अभी सफारी रिट्रीट्स का भी जजमेंट था तो वो काफी टाइम से लिटिगेशन में था. मतलब मेरे पास ड्यूअल इंटरप्रिटेशन उसका होना चाहिए. मतलब ऐसा भी नहीं हो कुछ क्लियर कट हो और मैंने बस ठीक है कि मेरे को टैक्स पे नहीं करना है. तो इफ समथिंग इज ऑलरेडी अंडर लिटिगेशन देन आई कैन ऑलवेज से लिटिगेशन में गया ही इसलिए क्योंकि वहां पे ड्यूअल इंटरप्रिटेशन उसका पॉसिबल था, तो हम लोग ग्राउंड ले सकते हैं. अगेन 74 के लिए तो आपको फिर मुझे ये प्रूव करना है कि मेरा जो इंटेंशन था वही फ्रॉडलेंट था. तो मैंने ना सिर्फ इंटरप्रिटेशन बट मैंने उसको एक्टिवली हाइड करने की भी कोशिश की उन सारे के सारे टर्म्स को. बट मैंने अगर अपनी रिटर्न में या फिर अपने डॉक्यूमेंटेशन में ओपनली लिखा ही है कि भाई मैं इस पर्टिकुलर एंट्री को शो कर रही हूँ बट मैंने टैक्स रेट उसका नील दिखाया है, तो उसका रीजन ये है कि मैंने सप्लाई तो पूरी शो की है आपको, टैक्स रेट मेरा उस पर बिलीव था कि नील है तो इसलिए मैंने आपको नील शो किया है. तो ऐसा कोई मैंने सप्रेशन ऑफ फैक्ट भी नहीं किया उस केस में. अविनाश भाई.
See, these things are very common now because misinterpretation or some misunderstanding, all these things we can understand. But let us first try to understand 74 और 73 में फर्क क्या है. Why 74? So in most of the cases, they miss the bus of 73 and therefore they try to catch the bus of 74. And the benefit which they have is the most important benefit is the extension of the time within which they will have to issue a show cause and within which they can adjudicate. Second benefit can be the bit of more penalty that they can levy. Now, after mandatory penalty under section 73, we cannot argue that penalty is leviable only when there is a mens rea. Because आप genuine case में जब आप खुद बोलते हैं कि fraud नहीं है, suppression नहीं है, misrepresentation नहीं है, वहां भी आप 10% penalty लगा रहे हैं, meaning thereby any mistake under law is leviable and exigible to the penalty. So, meaning thereby that also cannot be the benefit to the government or the authorities. The only benefit is extended period can be invoked. And therefore, I am of the belief, और मैं हमेशा ये बोलता हूँ कि अगर आपको कोई privilege दिया जाता है तो कोई एक ड्यूटी भी आपके ऊपर दी जाती है. For example, if a exemption is given to a taxpayer, there are certain conditions also which he needs to satisfy. Similarly, if he has to invoke section 74, taking the benefit or the privilege of invoking the extended period of limitation, he also has the burden of proving that there was an incidence of fraud, suppression, misrepresentation with the intention to evade tax. So now, in question of interpretation, like say for example, मैं आप एक example देता हूँ जो हम लोग अभी बॉम्बे हाई कोर्ट, गुजरात हाई कोर्ट में आर्ग्यू कर रहे हैं, that is pertaining to those cereal sellers जो दाल बेचते हैं या मैदा बेचते हैं, जो without any brand बेचते हैं. So there is a entry, I think entry number 45 or something, which says that they will be able to claim if they are selling in the container, then they will be able to claim the exemption or get the relief from the 5% levy if they satisfy these conditions. आप कमिश्नर को इंटीमेट करते हैं, एफिडेविट देते हैं और आप डिस्क्लेमर देते हैं अपने प्रोडक्ट पे, कंटेनर पे. So those are the conditions which are mandated. Now, if I do not satisfy those conditions, maybe for a bona fide reason, the departmental authorities cannot levy or cannot impose Section 74 merely on the basis that you have not disclosed this. They will have to establish that there was an indicator like this which indicated that you have knowingly tried to evade or avoid the payment of tax by doing this. So burden of proof becomes very important as per me when they are invoking Section 74. That why they are invoking the extended period of limitation. Because एक privilege लेने के लिए आपके ऊपर एक duty cast की गई है, which is burden of proof. You have to discharge that burden of proof, saying that look, these are the reasons on the basis of which we believe that there was a non-payment of tax by way of fraud, suppression, or misrepresentation to evade the tax. And if they do not, or if they are not able to discharge that burden, I am of the view that the show cause notice can be directly challenged and it will not be sustainable. That is what I can say. Vishal, before we move forward, मेरे एक चीज मैं बोलता हूँ, अश्वा के जो भी हम webinars करेंगे, we will be doing every 15 days now. We have to be very strict in time. Like we have started at 7.7, we'll conclude at 8.5 अभी हो गए, 8.3 हो गए. We should conclude in 5-7 minutes, and then we'll take up the questions so that we can sum up the entire webinar maximum by 8:25, 8:30, because we have to stick to the time so that कल जो भी लोग अटेंड करना चाहें या नेक्स्ट टाइम जो भी अटेंड करना चाहें, they are very sure कि उनको 7 बजे ज्वाइन करना है, and by 8:30 या जो भी टाइम हम फिक्स करेंगे, by that time they are free. So just keep that in mind. Let us not take any questions further. And we can
anyways, I think major questions we have covered. These are anyways follow-up questions.
But we'll take it as a second part of the session. No? We will take it next week or next to next week. We'll keep a second part of this discussion.
Yes.
So should we then take a few questions from
I think there are live. Yeah, there are some
audience की questions काफी ज़्यादा है actually.
So I think Pramodji, I'll just request that you make just copy all the questions so that by chance if something is missed out today, we can add up, we can make a proper question and we can cover it in our follow-up webinar of this, right? So in the meantime, maybe Avinash ji can take the from start. So Pramodji, can you just take the starting questions so that?
Yeah, so I think first few was around the chain of notices. So first question is, what about chain of people involved in one single SCN? So
I think Avinash ji has already answered that. So if one person pays, then I think the others will be relieved. This is what is our interpretation. And it means indirectly that the circular specifically for the fake invoicing, which levies penalty on everyone, is challengeable because of the explanation. Yes, Bhaiya?
Vishal bhai, pura market hill jayega. Department will be now on their toes after this webinar.
Yeah, but if we have a bona fide understanding, there is no problem, na? Because
absolutely.
Anyways,
we are lawyers. We are bound to challenge everything and anything and everything.
And we are giving a legal backing to it. In fact, the section is very clear. And most interestingly, the section that particular part was specifically added. If you see the slide,
explanation,
that particular part was specifically added from 2022. This itself shows that there is some intent in bringing that particular point. So I think I'll just take up that point. Yes. So as you can see here, this particular point of section 122 and 125 will be absolved. This has been added specifically from 1st January 2022.
Yeah.
And it is somewhere aligning with the issue of the circular also on fake invoicing. If you see the timelines, they are very close. So
I think very soon the government will have to release the definition of main person. Now they will define it.
But I think this is a very important takeaway specifically for all those who are dealing with the fake invoicing cases where their client is one of the person in the chain but not the main person. I think this can be a very valid defense either when they are handling in adjudication or if they are planning to take up a writ against that. Yes, so
okay, next one is a supplier to a party has got 122 notice for helping a party to avail ITC by alleging fake supply. Tax has already been think same thing. Can the
co-notice? Yeah, I think the question is the similar question. We can take the next one.
I have one query. Let us suppose Mr. A is a registered dealer under GST and avail ITC on the basis of invoice in 17-18 purchase transaction. Supplier GST number was cancelled by GST officer lately, but effective date of cancellation was first
Retrospective cancellation.
retrospectively. Yeah. So, what happened? Sorry.
So it is basically that question. I'll just summarize it. Jagdish
So
ji's
there is a
question is this.
mismatch between 2A and 3B, I can
Yeah.
see.
So the date when I availed, it was correct because it was appearing in my 2A. And but later on, because the supplier's officer cancelled his registration backdated retrospectively, hence now it has become a mismatch. So the main question that they want to know is that now since we have an amnesty scheme, which is applicable only for 73 cases, can this matter be converted from 74 to 73? That is, I think I had asked a similar question, but maybe we can take an answer for this. So Avinash bhai, I hope you understood the query.
Well, certainly it seems if the query is that the order has already been passed, so he need to get an order from the appellate authority saying that it is not a fit case for 74, it is a fit case for 73, which is there in section 75(2). Otherwise, he will have to go and knock the door of the writ court, wherein the writ court can convert this proceedings of 74 into 73.
So
Once this
their
is,
basic question is it possible? Means whether this particular facts
yes, it
is
is possible.
yeah. So it is
See, everything,
a good case.
anything and everything is possible in this legal world. Anything and everything is possible. आप क्राइम करके आने के बाद भी छूट सकते हैं, आप बिना क्राइम किए हुए भी फंस सकते हैं. Only the way is how you demonstrate yourself and you represent yourself before the authorities or the court. अगर आप अच्छे से करेंगे, if you are able to convince the court, not confuse, then you will be able to get this.
Pramod ji, I'll just request, since multiple questions are flowing in, you just keep on copying these questions because I'm sure we'll not be able to address all now, but we can have a follow-up session of this.
Just Karthik ka question that we can take up. He's saying that is there any court order in GST regime?
No, we have 15 minutes. We can take up all those which are
So we are
possible.
going sequentially, but at
Yes.
least yeah, ma'am, you please read out the question. Yeah.
So
Ma'am.
emphasizing the satisfaction of specific ingredients under section 74 for invoking section 74. So he's saying कि erstwhile regime में हमारे पास there are many judgments, but say that in GST regime department not accepting the view.
So in short, what is the validity and applicability of judgments on fraud, on misrepresentation of excise era in the GST era? I think this is what is Karthik ji's specific question.
One thing is very clear. We have also discussed that if a law is laid down by the apex court or the jurisdictional higher courts, then it becomes binding precedents, and the binding precedents have to be followed. But at times, what happens is he will try to discriminate. He will try to create a distinction between the GST regime and the erstwhile regime. So my answer would be that certainly it is binding on them. If it is a law which is laid down by the apex court or the jurisdictional high court. And second, you also need to appreciate and agree on one point that even the GST orders, they are not following. So they can do anything and everything. You simply just contain your point and take it ahead to the higher level, maybe to the first appeal or the second appeal, you'll get the relief. Or if you are feeling aggrieved and you are unable to pay the pre-deposit and all, then you can directly go to the writ court and try your luck, which is again going to be difficult. After the order, if the alternate remedy is there, there can be another session for that. It is difficult to convince the court and get a relief.
So basically, then they have to challenge this in appeal, but it is a maintainable point. So Karthik ji, answering your question that whether the past regime cases are applicable, answer is yes, because they are given by the authority, that is court. So ma'am, you can take the next question.
Next one is for the aspect relating to 74 notice for audit cases. Is there any case law reference in GST regime that 74 notice shall not be issued?
For audit cases?
Yeah.
I'm not able to recall upfront.
What?
So जो हमारा एक question था, so there is no case.
There cannot be any. There cannot be. It is a subjective question. It is depending on the facts of that particular case.
Correct.
And that case law, if any case law is there, then also it will not be applicable in your case.
Yeah, it is true.
You will have to make out your own case, because we have already discussed that 74 is applicable in case of audit cases in exceptional circumstances.
Correct.
Otherwise, it has to be under 73. So if you are aggrieved and you are finding that 74 years invoked, which should not have been invoked, then you should go and knock the door of the court independently without relying on any judgments.
Yep.
Just rely on the principle of the law.
अविनाश भाई, इससे मेरा एक क्वेश्चन है इस पे ऑडिट वाले पॉइंट पे. As we have said that audit functioning is different from the investigation. So at the time of audit itself, कि किसी लेवल पे है कि हम ऑडिटिंग टीम को ही रोक सके कि भाई आप सिर्फ इतना ही कर सकते हो एंड आफ्टर दैट यू कैन नॉट डू एनीथिंग.
इतने गट्स किसके पास है?
हाँ,
कर
but
तो
this is
सकते हैं.
also a very common question कि maybe the time limit for 73 is over now, even 74 is over. Still at times they are demanding the records of 17, 18. They are still asking
Right,
that
sir.
while audit. So the question is, can you means obviously
That can be denied. That can be
yes.
denied because they do not have, they cannot presume jurisdiction which is not there with them.
So even if they do audit and they dig out something, there is anyways no case maintainable because now all the timelines are over. So definitely, but as we are rightly pointed out, कि उनको रोकेंगे कैसे? Somehow there is, I believe, there is no accountability. That is the problem.
There
There
is
is no.
one unique possibility in case a tax is collected but not paid to the government. For that particular recovery, there is no time limit. That is the only case, the only single case that
76.
76, yes.
Correct.
Okay, next question is, if audit is going on for financial year 2021 and there is a shortfall in 2A, they have issued ADT 2. Can they invoke 74 now? 73 time limit is over.
I think this also we address
Yeah.
indirectly when we are talking about 2A 3B mismatch. If it is a breach of law itself, that is you have taken a wrong credit, then 74 is maintainable. Otherwise, if it is purely because of mismatch where it is reported in some other period, I think Bhaiya has already answered. In that particular case, 74 is not maintainable. Yes, sir.
Is there any recourse of notice for RCM demand along with interest and penalty on services availed from Facebook between July 2017 to March 2020?
OIDER. I think they're talking about OIDER services. See, in case of OIDER, where the recipient is a non-taxable recipient, only their forward charge is applicable. So basically, we have to check whether it is a case of forward charge or reverse charge. Now, I think they are the recipient of this service, and the officer has raised the issue under reverse charge that they have not paid tax under reverse charge. I think we have to first go and check that whether reverse charge was applicable on this transaction of OIDER services. Now, whether it's the Facebook services OIDER service or whether it is the advertisement service, sponsorship service, again, that is a point to be checked. So I think it is a very open-ended question. I think Avinash Bhaiya wants to add something.
Problem is nobody wants to challenge that because the amounts are very low.
Nominal, yes.
Right, right.
10,000 रुपए का है, 5,000 रुपए का है, 25,000
छोटे
रुपए का पैसे. Nobody wants to challenge that. Otherwise, none of those notices are sustainable. They don't have any backup at all. किसके basis पे उन्होंने notice भेजा है? Nothing. They got some garbage from somewhere and they have issued notice blindly, which is not permissible in law. In any law, forget about GST. In any law, it is not permissible. एक चीज मैं बोलना चाहूंगा, जब when we were discussing about that audit, that who has the guts. So one of my colleagues have just sent me a message. I'll not name that colleague also, and I'll not name that client also. But we have filed one petition recently in Gujarat High Court wherein the client had the guts. उसने बोला आप इतना ही audit कर सकते हो, उससे ज्यादा नहीं कर सकते. So yes, there are people who challenges that. We really need to appreciate.
So maybe very soon we'll get an order on that.
Let's see.
Let's see. So, but it has been challenged. So for
Yes.
the person who is having that query,
and we have also filed a complaint against that particular officer who has misguided the client. So we have made him as a respondent party in his name. Anyways, I cannot.
वहाँ कंप्लेंट करके बच जाते हैं. अभी इधर नॉर्थ इंडिया में तो कंप्लेंट करने की रिपोर्टेशंस बहुत आई है.
Please
अविनाश
advise.
भाई, आपने सही बोला कि वो बहुत ओडीआर के लिए या फेसबुक वाले मैटर के लिए बहुत छोटी अमाउंट होती है, तो कोई लिटिगेशन में जाना नहीं
जाना नहीं चाहते.
होता. लेकिन प्रैक्टिकल केस ऐसा हुआ है कि
if somebody want to go na, if somebody want to proceed in Gujarat High Court, I am ready to do it for pro bono. So that we can settle an example, we can set an example which can be used by rest of the company, rest of the persons in across the country.
That's true. But there is one unique case. The department has issued the notice. The client has paid the interest. The client has paid the tax as well as the penalty, and interest is yet to be paid. For that, DRC-01 is not been issued, and the message was of drop proceeding. Now, still they can recover the interest after making the drop proceeding by the department itself. And officer himself is not aware about that the drop proceeding has been created on the system.
सिस्टम है, सिस्टम सब जानता है, सिस्टम सब गड़बड़ करता है.
नहीं, ये एक्चुअल में हुआ है तो क्या अभी बोलते हैं इंटरेस्ट के लिए तो हम आएंगे आपके पास रिकवर करने के लिए.
He can do it. Interest is inevitable, like death. Taxes and death are inevitable. Similarly, interest is inevitable.
Okay. one more question of Mr. Sumit Jain is there. If my
हम एक काम कर सकते हैं, हम ये पेमेंट ही नहीं कर सकते हैं और वेट कर सकते हैं. गवर्नमेंट विल कम आउट विद सम एमनेस्टी every 2 years or 3 years down the line. Now government has made this as a trend कि जो जेन्युइन व्यक्ति है, जो टैक्स भरता है, इंटरेस्ट भरता है, पेनल्टी भरता है, he has to suffer. और जो इनजेन्युइन बंदे हैं उनको आप रिलीफ देंगे, इंटरेस्ट और पेनल्टी का भी रिलीफ देंगे. So this is unfortunate, but this is what is being going on since last 10 years. में देख रहा हूँ हर 2 साल 3 साल में कोई एमनेस्टी आ जाती है, and every fraudster is waiting for that.
I think we take up a last question. If from Mr.
Rest of the questions we can take note of those questions.
Yeah.
We can take note of those questions and then we can probably take up during the next part, because we'll have to have multiple parts of this section 74. इतना easy नहीं है ये. It will take some time and it is going very interesting, I believe. जिस तरीके से
Yes, very interesting, very practical. There are multiple WhatsApp messages flowing in. Thanks for informing this, and it was very informative. And it shows about the from the number of participants that have continued right till the end, despite of it being Saturday. So I think we can conclude now. And Amish bhai,
one last question. I think this we need to answer.
Please.
It's about C.S. Sumit Jain. If my buyer is bogus, can they levy a penalty under section 122 by saying ITC has been passed for a fake supply?
What is the question?
If my buyer is bogus, can they levy penalty under 122 by saying ITC has been passed on for fake supply only?
Yes, why not? Because there is a clause, section 122, subclause 1, clause 7, subsection 1, clause 7, which says कि अगर आपने कोई bogus invoices लेके उसकी credit ले ली है, then that needs to be reversed. Pass on के लिए clause 2 और clause 3 है.
Okay.
So in any of those clauses, if we are following that, 122 is applicable to us.
Great. So
let us take the cognizance of the rest of the questions, and in YouTube also there are multiple questions.
So I think
so YouTube में तो वो रहेगा. Shalin, are you there? Whether we will be having the catch of these?
Yes, sir.
After this session also, these YouTube questions.
Yes.
So we can keep the track of these questions also, and we'll compile it. And next session में we'll start with these questions, and then we'll discuss it further.
Okay.
Perfect. So Amish bhai, I request you to do the honors of giving the vote of thanks.
On behalf of Team Aishwa, I Amish Desai, thank you Vishal ji, Shaifali ji, Avinash bhai, Shailin bhai, Ashu bhai, and all other participants who are actively involved today for this wonderful session. I must say thank you to the learned speaker of our team that who have given the insight about section 74 and related issues.
Thank you not to learned speaker. Thank you to the members of the team.
Members of the team. Okay, we are part of that. One more thing that I would like to quote is there. We have a website of our ashwalegal.com. You can connect with us through contact form also for any other queries. And also for we have a network policy for all the associates members. So if you want to connect, you can fill the contact form and we'll get back to you on this. Thank you all for your wonderful time.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you very much.
Bye Vishal ji.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you.